He thought he was just helping two lost girls in the rain, but that one mistake turned his perfect life into a living nightmare. At the beginning of the story, we are introduced to a family. The husband's name is Evan and the wife's name is Karen. Both of them, along with their two children, were living a happy life. Karen worked in an art gallery, while Evan was an architect. One day, Evan and Karen, along with their children, planned to go on a beach trip. But at the last moment, due to some urgent architectural work, Evan was unable to join them. Therefore, Karen left for the beach trip with their children, while Evan stayed at home with his dog. That night, while Evan was busy with his work, the doorbell rang. When he opened the door, he saw two young women drenched in the rain. Their names were Belle and Genesis. They told Evan that they were on their way to a party, but had lost their way, and because of the rain, their phones had stopped working. Out of kindness, Evan invited them inside. He gave them towels and offered one of them his iPad so they could check the location of the party. After searching, they discovered that the party venue was quite far away. Evan then booked them a cab, which was scheduled to arrive in about 45 minutes. Since the two girls were soaked from the rain, they asked to use Evan's bathroom. After getting fresh, they returned while Evan was preparing coffee for them. The three sat together and began chatting. Evan asked them what they did for a living. They replied that they were flight attendants and often took great care of the men on their flights. Then they came closer to Evan and began to demonstrate how they served passengers. But Evan felt uncomfortable and moved away, choosing another chair to sit on. At that moment, he checked his phone and saw that the cab was still 20 minutes away. The girls then asked about his wife, and Evan told her that she worked in an art gallery. As the conversation continued, the girls kept moving closer to him. Evan repeatedly tried to ignore their advances. When he checked his phone again, he saw that the cab was only 5 minutes away, which gave him some relief, as he was clearly uncomfortable with their behavior. But just 2 minutes before the cab's arrival, Belle and Genesis slipped into the bathroom. They began drying themselves, and when Evan approached, he told them their clothes were ready and the cab had arrived. However, the girls ignored him, laughing and continuing their shower. After knocking several times without any response, Evan reluctantly entered the bathroom with his hand over his eyes to hand them their clothes. But when he went inside, he saw both of them bathing naked. They urged Evan to join them, pressing themselves against him. Evan resisted, reminding himself that he was married, but the girls continued seducing him, and eventually he lost control. Evan became intimate with them in the bathroom and later again in the bedroom. Meanwhile, the cab driver, after waiting outside for some time, eventually left. The next morning, when Evan awoke, the girls were gone. He assumed they had left, but then he heard their laughter from the kitchen. When he went there, he found the kitchen in complete disarray. Just then, he received a video call from Karen. To avoid her seeing the mess, he went outside to talk to her. After the call, Evan returned inside, furious, and told the girls to put on their clothes and leave immediately. But instead of leaving, the girls began vandalizing Karen's artwork. Enraged, Evan threatened to call the police, warning them to leave at once if they wanted to save themselves. But the girls only laughed. They told him that they were underage, and since he had slept with them, he had already committed a serious crime. If he called the police, they would accuse him of assault, and the law would take their side. Horrified, Evan realized the gravity of the mistake he had made. Just then, the doorbell rang. It was Karen's friend, Louis, who had come to check if Karen needed anything. Evan panicked, afraid that Vivian might discover the girls. But as he was speaking to her, Genesis suddenly appeared and clung to him. Seeing this, Vivian assumed Evan was having an affair. Furious, she insulted him and left. Now, even angrier, Evan tried once again to call the police. Fearing exposure, Belle and Genesis begged him not to. To get rid of them, Evan put them in his car, drove a short distance, and dropped them near a house. Relieved, he returned home, only to find the house in a terrible condition. He cleaned up and sat down to resume his work. But just then, he heard a noise. A family photo had fallen. As he bent down to pick it up, Genesis suddenly struck him on the head with a fire extinguisher, knocking him unconscious. When Evan wakes up, he finds himself tied to the bed. The girls taunt him, wear his daughter's school uniform, and threaten to expose him on a video call with his wife unless he obeys them. Scared, Evan complies, while Genesis records everything. Meanwhile, Evan struggled with the ropes and finally managed to break free. He pushed Belle aside and rushed toward Genesis. During their fight, Genesis stabbed Evan in the chest with a fork, causing him to collapse and lose consciousness. Later, a worker named Lewis arrives to collect one of Karen's sculptures. The girls lie to him, pretending to be Evan's cousins, but Lewis grows suspicious when he notices the destroyed artwork and then hears Evan shouting from another room. Rushing to help, he is overpowered by the girls, who trigger his asthma attack and cruelly withhold his inhaler. In the violent struggle, Lewis strikes his head against a sculpture and dies. The girls then send a text from Lewis's phone to Evan, saying, "You slept with my wife. Stay away from me or I'll kill you." They do this to make it look like Evan murdered Lewis. Evan was horrified. The girls then told Evan that he was now a murderer, since Lewis had died in his house. If the police found out, they would blame him. Terrified, Evan realized he was trapped. The girls then dug a large hole in the backyard. They continued torturing Evan, forcing him to do things he didn't want to do. Helpless, he was repeatedly humiliated. They destroyed Karen's artwork and caused more chaos in the house. Finally, they dragged Evan outside and buried him in the hole. On his face, they placed a recording of his intimate night with them, ensuring that if anyone found him, they would know his secret. After burying Evan, the girls left gleefully. Evan, struggling to move his finger with great difficulty, tried to delete the video, but accidentally ended up liking it instead. He screamed louder with disappointment on his face. Shortly afterwards, Karen returned home with the children, only to find the house in ruins. And with that, the movie ends.